Social media and AI are rewiring attention, identity, and resilience, especially for our kids. Today on the Battle Harder podcast, I was joined by Dr. Stefan Mateka, a board certified child and adolescent psychiatrist, to break down the algorithm's grip, TikTok self diagnosis, when a kid's actually ready for a phone, and how to set guardrails that actually work. Content note: we do mention depression and suicide. If you need help and you're in the United States, call or text 988. Share this with one parent who needs to hear it. Let's lock in, and here's Dr. Mateka.
You face battles most never fought, pain, struggle, adversity. But here, we use that as fuel. This is the Battle Harder podcast, where we motivate, educate, and inspire warriors of life, veterans, survivors, leaders. We share stories and strategies to turn pain into progress. Here's your host, Coach Rob. Let's lock in and battle harder.
What is up, everybody? It's your host, Coach Rob, here at the Battle Harder podcast, where I hope to motivate, educate, and inspire you to become the best version of yourself. Now, today's episode, it's a little off course from what I typically talk about, but I think it's not any more important than anything else I talk about when it comes to mental health, being a good parent, being a good father, realizing what we can do to protect our kids and our children. So today is going to be a very interesting episode in the realms of talking about social media, AI, and the abuse and the harm that it can have to our children and to our adult counterparts. So I'd like to welcome an expert on that. So I have here on the show today, Dr. Stefan Mateka. Doc, thanks for being here today.
My pleasure, Coach Rob. I really appreciate you being willing to raise awareness about such an important topic.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, anything in the realms of helping our youth become the best version of themselves, it's definitely important. So before we get into the episode, just give us a little background about who you are and what you currently do.
Certainly. My name's Dr. Stephen Mateka. I'm a board-certified child and adolescent psychiatrist, and I primarily work in an inpatient setting, which means I'm working with kids for a short period of time that are coming in to the hospital because they're in crisis. They're dangerous in some way to themselves, others, or property. And they are able to leave the hospital when they are stabilized and have shown to be safe and willing and confident to continue to be safe without 24/7 supervision.
And was there something that happened in your life, or what led you to get into the area of working with children?
So I wanted to become a psychiatrist, but before I went to med school, I worked in a psychiatric hospital to see if the idea of it and the reality of it met up. And I worked for a significant period of time on what was called a dual diagnosis unit, working with adults with substance abuse and mental illness struggles. But then I had an opportunity to work with the child and adolescent population, and that's where it felt like it all clicked. Like the calling, the idea that this is something that feels right. Honestly, it felt like I was stealing money, that I was able to be there and that was considered work, and just something where like my natural temperament and personality really helped me connect with kids and teens. And in the world of behavioral health, we don't have the luxury of CAT scans, X-rays, blood tests to say, yeah, this is what you got. So it's all about the amount of information you're able to get. And if you don't have a legitimate connection with your patient, they're not going to be real with you, and you're not going to get the most important information to understand them and then put them in the best position to succeed.
That's awesome. And so with the people that typically come into your clinic, is there a common variety problem? Is there something you see more of than the stuff that you're currently seeing in today's society and situations?
I mean, the main stuff I see is physical aggression and suicidal ideation or suicide attempts. And one of the most common threads through it tends to be trauma. Right? Trauma completely changes our brain and our view of ourselves and the world and others. And it really does kind of like take the power away, and it convinces people of things that feel real but objectively aren't true. It's very rare for me to have a patient that's coming to me that doesn't have some type of thread of trauma in their life, either recently or in their distant past.
And that's, typically everybody I talk to on the show has to deal in trauma or have dealt with trauma, and they've learned to overcome it and build back better. But we're talking today in kind of the realms of social media and the dangers behind that. Uh, we know that, especially with COVID and everything that's happened, we're more a society of, I guess, I don't want to say loners, but we're more apt to be alone and go through connections through social media and not really being in person and have in person connections. So, starting to speak on that, what are you seeing as far as the mental health issues or some of the things that you're finding from your patients in the realms of the social media and how they're using it?
Well, to your point, kids that are coming to me in crisis usually have a pretty significant level of isolation leading up to it. And it is developmentally appropriate for teenagers to value peer interactions and peer approval more than anything else. It's the classic, if you've raised kids and teenagers, when they get that part where you don't really seem all that important. They don't really care about being at home. It's the friends and the social circle is the end all be all. So like you said, with COVID, it just has really shifted that social circle to being online. And it's just so much easier to curate an image and present yourself in a certain way that isn't a real accurate representation of who you are. And kids don't know any better, so they're going to more or less like believe what they see. And then that's where then the comparison effect really comes in, and they tend to compare themselves to these people that look like they have this great life or this perfect situation and setup. And we know as adults, for the most part, like that's not the actual reality, but they don't know any better. And like, it's not their fault. Kids' job is to figure out the world, figure out how to get their needs met, and as teenagers, to figure out who they are. And when it comes to social media, there's a lot of options to kind of find yourself, to find your niche and see where you fit and see where you like where your group is. And it's all about just trying to feel a part of something, to feeling like a sense of identity, a sense of self. And I will say constantly to my patients when this is impacted that an unhealthy or an inaccurate identity is better than no identity at all. And social media is like a ripe breeding ground for people to try on whatever feels right.
Yeah, and you really hit something there. Even with adults, comparison on social media is a huge problem across the board, not just for teens and kids. Because as I tell people when I coach people or talk about overcoming trauma and stuff, we see this highlight reel. We see people that want to post only what they want you to see, and then, like you said, you take that as reality, and you're like, oh, I don't have that nice car, or I don't have that nice house, not realizing that maybe that person just rent that car to do a photo shoot to say, look at me. And it's building this false sense of hope and identity. So I've noticed a trend where it seems like more and more kids at younger ages are getting on social media. What's like one of the very first things a parent should do or could do when when is the right time to decide that a child should be on social media, in your opinion?
So there are no strict guidelines about at this age, because as we know, kids have different maturity levels, different life experiences, different levels of supervision. What I will say is that you want to make sure that the kid, the teen, whatever age they are, that they can grasp the dangers that come with social media, and they can tell what's the difference between what's real and fake. And then it's about, can you set certain parameters, monitoring around their social media use, and is the kid able to agree to it? So it's really individualized to the kid, but it's where your comfort level is. But you have to educate your child. You have to monitor your child, whether they like it or not. To me, that I say I'm not here to like tell people how to parent, but I am here to let them know how things can work out. And kids do best when they have clear expectations, and they know if they do certain things, they will lead to certain results, whether it's good, bad, or in between. So you need to then set those clear expectations of their social media use and the monitoring, and let them know what would happen if they do not abide. And then you have to follow through. To me, that's way more important than necessarily saying, okay, this age, the brain is developed enough to really handle this decision making, because it's not until you're 25 that our frontal lobe is fully formed. So like that's where you get your ability to put the brakes on things. And adolescents, like they're all gas, man. So if you don't put the parameters and guardrails in place for them, they're going to just drive it right off.
And I would say it starts with a open conversation as the parent or the provider or caregiver, whoever is watching the child. I have an old school, I guess, way of thinking. For my son, he knows that as long as I'm paying that cell phone bill, I can go through his phone anytime I want, and he can't argue that. And it's not because I have this deep seated military background of you have to fall in the line. No, it's for his protection. I know for me as a parent personally, he just now turned 13, and up until now I was very careful of what rated R movies I would let him watch, not because I didn't think he could handle it, but knowing that when I was a kid in the 70s and 80s, my parents were letting me watch Rambo and Predator and all the things that I probably shouldn't have watched back then. And for him, I wanted to protect him not from what he would see, but I just want him to build up his maturity level. And I remember there's tough conversations where he's like, well, this person's playing Call of Duty. Why can't I play Call of Duty? Well, because you're my son and it's not appropriate at the time. But how do we get kids to, it's hard in a society where we have video games, we have social media, we have AI, we have everything. And I think it really starts with the parent element and making sure the parents are spending time with their children, whether they're taking them places or making them go outside for a little bit or doing things. But if a child doesn't have that opportunity, what are some things we can do to start to separate them, not to completely take them away from social media, but to get them thinking about other things that are maybe more important in life?
So to get them, instead of so much focus on social media, just like how do you get them to other areas? Yeah, certainly. I think it's, to your point, like it's about having open, honest conversations with your child, because it's just as important that they feel understood and feel heard. Because if they don't, they're not going to be willing to be real with you about what they're going through. So it's kids and people are always about trying to get our needs met. So being able to understand what is alluring to a kid for social media, to me, is like one of the first steps, because it's meeting some type of need. And then to like your point, it's like, okay, well then how do we meet that in a way that doesn't involve being chronically online and doom scrolling? And if it's about they want the opportunity to connect with somebody, then you talk about extracurricular activities. Or if they're looking for an opportunity to be heard, you can try to put them in that position first, making sure that you're hearing them and see if there are opportunities to have a creative outlet, whether it is through writing, drawing, something of that nature. It's really about first seeing why it matters to them, why they want to do it, and then using that information to steer them towards something that you feel comfortable with as their parent, and what you are okay with having them being exposed to.
Do you think that goes into the whole, parents leading by example, that obviously if you're a single mother doing sexy TikTok dances and your child seeing that, that's probably not very appropriate, and that we need to lean more towards the whole, I'm going to lead by example and I'm going to show my kids how to do things the right way versus do as I say, not as I do mentality?
I tend to look at it as a bit more gray than that. I can appreciate both areas. Of course, the idea of modeling for your kids how you want them to be a decision maker or react or handle things, like that's more than appropriate. On the other end, though, like you're still the adult and they're still the child, and it's I don't think it makes sense to hold each to a completely same standard. Like for example, as you talk about, if it's the mom that's doing sexy dances on TikTok, now if the kid is exposed to it, if he's watching that and able to like see it being done, yes, of course, that is incredibly concerning. But if they're not, if they're shielded from that, like that is more than age appropriate and fine for an adult to want to do that. So I think it's about what makes sense for you, for your child, and then recognizing, okay, like some things I am absolutely going to lead by example, and other things like I'm allowed to do it and you're not, and that's the reality of the situation. That's the reality of life. And then you also start to teach that lesson, because if a kid goes through life thinking that they are entitled to do whatever they want, because as long as they're following their parent, well, their parent may be doing things differently than maybe other people or society, or in a way that then could put that child at risk. So I think it's about trying to see a bit more of the nuance and the gray in that. But like anything else, like asking yourself, does this make sense for me as a parent and for my child? And then you got to go from there. We know it's, other than, I mean, caregiving is the hardest job in the world. None of us are perfect. We always mess it up in some way, shape, or form. But if you're intentional and you're thoughtful about it, and you're treating your children with like empathy and authenticity, you know, it's you're going to really minimize the risks and mitigate the mistakes.
I like that. And guys, we're going to take a short commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk more with Dr. Mateka. We're going to talk about some of the hidden dangers of the algorithm of TikTok and YouTube and all that stuff, and continue the conversation of how we can protect our kids. So we'll be right back. Stay tuned. They told you to stay comfortable. You chose the battle. Battle Fitted is for the few who live by discipline in the gym, in the mirror, and in the mind. This isn't just fitness, it's transformation. From our coaching and mindset resources to apparel that speaks without saying a word, to keynotes that shake rooms awake, we train warriors, not followers. No fluff, no shortcuts, just real work, real change. If you're tired of talking about it, prove it. Lock in your first workout, grab your gear, book the mission at battlefittedbrand.com. And we're back. And Doc, I just want to go down the rabbit hole of what kind of things are you seeing your patients diagnose themselves with, and how does that relate to what they're possibly diagnosing themselves with as far as the realms of using social media?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, it's that kids are looking for, like I said earlier, they're looking for an identity. They're trying to figure out who they are. And like we think about our own teenage years, like we're trying on different hats. We're trying to see what fits for us, who's our group, what we really value and care about. So like to a degree, their desire to figure out who they are is very normal. But it's when you add in like real life psychiatric diagnoses, self-diagnosing, obviously that's when it becomes pretty perilous. The main things that I've been seeing from a self-diagnosis standpoint, probably most commonly have been autism spectrum disorder and dissociative identity disorder. Also starting to see more ADHD. We know that at least 50% of mental health information on TikTok is inaccurate, and people are not always the most forthcoming or with the most pure motives and reasons. And like you see a lot, especially lately now around ADHD, so much of a way of like, this is your superpower. I'm presenting it in a way that makes you want to have ADHD. That is just completely inaccurate. And then with the autism, you're seeing so much of the terms of neurodivergent and neurodivergence. And it's the issue is when something that is appropriate and normal in everyday life gets pathologized to something clinically significant, and then it gets owned as an identity for a kid. And because something feels right or someone names their pain, then that's what they latch on to.
And with that being said, like how hard is it to actually, is it easy to see like through what they're saying they have versus what they actually have? And how are you like treating that currently?
Yeah, I would like to believe for for child and adolescent mental health professionals, it's fairly easy because we had to go through years, decade of training and education to know this diagnostic criteria inside and out and to know what it actually looks like in real life. So when I have a teenager that I ask them kind of what they're going through, and they basically give me verbatim diagnostic criteria, I'm like, you don't just know that. You're not describing what it's actually like to be you. Like, you read that somewhere and to the point of memorized it. So that's very atypical. Like, that's an immediate red flag. And then the other part that makes it easy is when people describe what they think it's like to have the diagnosis, but their idea of it and the reality are very far apart. Like, for a very basic example, in order to have an autism diagnosis, amongst some of the criteria you need, the stuff that you have to have is issues with social communication and recognizing other people's emotions, being able to pick up on social cues, nonverbal language, back and forth conversation, things that are easy to see when they're there or when they're not there from an expert's perspective. So when kids want to tell me they have this diagnosis, and meanwhile they're building right off of our conversation up until that point, they're picking up on my sarcasm or humor, or they're reacting like with a facial expression appropriately based on what we're talking about. Like, well, then that's not it. Like, but they don't really fully understand that. So I think it makes it fairly easy, in my opinion, for us to know when a child is self-diagnosing themselves inaccurately versus that it makes sense clinically from our standpoint.
And I'll be the first to say, as someone who has deep-seated mental health issues, you do not want to have mental health issues if you have a choice. So, it's not cool for me to be depressed or have PTSD. Like, I do use it to overcome a lot of things, and this is what I do now with the things that I've been through, but I would not wish mental health issues on anybody. So for kids and teens that are using social media that you deem they're getting misinformation, can you expand on that? Like, what is the misinformation and what are they picking up from these platforms that are essentially causing them these problems?
Yeah, I mean, the main misinformation is either normalizing really actually significant psychiatric signs and symptoms. Like I was talking earlier about, like with the ADHD, like, oh, this is your superpower. Just because you can multitask and hold all these things in your head at once and run through everything. Like, nah, man, like real ADHD, it takes a whole hell of a lot of effort to be able to lock in and focus on anything that's a non-preferred task. It's not a superpower. Like, talk to someone that has ADHD and isn't appropriately treated. Like, they'll tell you what it's really like. So it's that part on one side is that normalization of actually pathologic signs and symptoms, and then the complete opposite, which is when, like, you have just everyday things that are made to seem like they are clinically significant. And I think, like, in that regard, it's easier for a kid to be seduced because they're like, oh, I sometimes don't feel like getting out of bed. Oh, I guess I'm depressed. But again, like, they're just looking at it at such a superficial level, not having a true understanding of what it's like. Like, yeah, all of us at some point in time don't feel like getting out of bed because of whatever tasks or responsibilities that are waiting for us. But that's not the same as, like, debilitating depression where you don't have any of the energy or motivation or even think that you're, like, worthy of getting out of bed, or that if you do get out of bed, it's just going to be all bad. Like, it's just a very superficial understanding of things. And then kids will just grasp onto it because there are no group of people that are better at having a gap between the idea of something and the reality of it. Like, we know, like, teens, they swear they know what they're talking about. They have enough life experience to be semi-informed, but not nearly enough life experience to realize they're only semi-informed. And so, like, they just swear they're right.
So, what are some warning signs that parents or teachers or peer support groups that deal with children that are going through issues with social media? What's some things that they can pick up on that may realize that, oh, hey, I need to dig deeper on this or seek some sort of help?
I think it's more about if social media is making that type of negative impact for somebody. I don't think there's necessarily something very specific to say it's social media is a problem outside of, I think would be the most obvious is just like how much time they're spending online, what's their actual screen time look like. But outside of that, it's about, okay, am I seeing changes in this child? Because anytime when it comes to meeting the criteria for any psychiatric diagnosis, it always has to involve an impairment in function, either at school, at work, in your personal life, at home, socially. There has to be like the inability to do things the way you want to do them, how you want to go about things. So it's really listening to your gut, so to speak, because a lot of times we'll have the thought that pops in like, oh, like that person seems kind of off today, or that's not really like themselves, or they don't typically do that. But we're not sure then what we would do with that information. We don't want to make it too big of a deal. But if there's something telling you that something seems different, then there is no harm in, well, there could be no harm in trying to explore if something is going on. But as I stop myself because kids are also like experts at deceiving,
Hiding stuff. Yeah.
of what's going on. So then it leads to like the way that you approach them to understand it. But like that's the main thing. So if the most serious stuff obviously being suicide and suicidality, it's only like research supports, it's only like a 50-50 flip of the coin for a parent to accurately identify when a child is going through something internalizing like depression and anxiety, things that we don't see on the outside. We can see aggressive behavior. We can see outbursts. It's obvious and easy to know when that's an issue. But when it's on the inside, it could be much harder. So things looking for like changes in sleep, not doing the things they usually like to do, or spending time with the people they normally like to spend time with, saying they're really tired, having a harder time concentrating, not eating with the same type of appetite. Those types of things that if you could just at least pay attention to, you don't have to necessarily rely on the kid being forthcoming. But it's about, okay, if I really feel confident that there's something going on with my kid, let me try at least to gather some evidence so that if they do push back, deflect, minimize, like, well, then, okay, but these are the reasons that I'm coming to you with this. This seems different. That seems different. And then, take it from there with like curiosity and wanting to understand, because as soon as a kid feels talked at or dismissed or invalidated, they're not going to give you what's real.
Yeah, definitely. I've noticed that between my 13-year-old son, me and my ex-wife, if she yells at him, he shuts down. When he did some of the things he did that was inappropriate, it was very scary and I was very frustrated and angry. But you're exactly right. I had to come to more of a place of understanding, watch my tone, how I speak to him, and say, like, look, I just, this is for your safety and I want to protect you. So I want to find out why you did this and why you are doing this. And you're definitely right about the deceiving, because he tried to like throw something in there that he didn't do. And I'm like, buddy, first of all, I was a police officer for 18 years. I don't think you can really lie to me at this point, but I have this as proof. I have that as proof. I have this as proof. So lying about it is not going to make the situation go away. And then after that, it wasn't just a matter of just forgetting about the problem. It was revisiting it and having those uncomfortable conversations that I didn't want to have about, well, look, how has your cell phone usage been? How has your internet presence been? And, right now, since I can't maybe trust you, I'm going to have to go through that phone. And it's just for your safety. Once again, it's not because, and I think it comes from, for a lot of kids, and maybe you can expand on this, just the sense wanting attention, wanting love, and wanting to be along. And like you said, they kind of find these groups and these niches that maybe they identify with something, even if it seems a little off from the norm of society, and they kind of latch on to that. Would you agree with that?
No, absolutely. That they're looking for their community, at a time in their life where it's completely appropriate for them to be doing it. And like anything else, like there are so many pitfalls that come with it. Yeah, that's without a doubt. Like you hit the nail on the head, and I really appreciate the effort that you put in with your son, because like, man, you want to talk about something that's easier said than done. Like that visceral rush of emotion when your child does something that you are not okay with. It takes a lot of effort, and you got to be really self-aware and conscientious. Like, if I react the way I really want to react, it's actually be counterproductive.
Yeah.
Like that's ideally what stops us, because like if the amount that we have to use our filter, and then to your point about like being willing to have the uncomfortable conversation, because like that's the reality. And too many times I see parents that think they're making a decision for the best of the child and the child's distress, but in reality what they're doing is making a choice to ease their own distress.
Right.
And like you like steal the kid's struggle. You only get an opportunity to become resilient when you have to face failure and stressors and difficulties. So like if you're like, oh, it's too much to see my son upset, or I'm afraid if I have this really important, honest conversation with them, how they're going to react, well, then you're just doing it for you, actually, not actually for what's best for your child. And again, it's like something so much easier said than done. But if you're at least self-aware, no one's going to get it, 100% of the time, but you'll definitely be doing something with more intention. And when we do things with intention, we're much more likely to follow through and be successful.
And this is everything that I talk about, is even with my own mental health issues, going into that darkness and having that difficult conversation with myself to be able to overcome it. And, the things that my son did while they weren't like something where he would go to prison, in my mind or my opinion with my values, it was pretty bad. And to still have to bring it up occasionally, it sucks, but I have to, because I have to let him know that, one, I love him, he's my son, but two, that what he did was not all right, and this behavior can't continue, and we have to fix the behavior. And even with my ex-wife, like, I'm learning that communication, the more you can communicate effectively as a co-parent, as a parent, to your kids and to the person you're co-parent, it's a beautiful thing. She called me crying, upset yesterday, and my son did some things. He's 13. He's being a 13-year-old currently. And she's like, I researched, how to talk to him better. I researched this. And I told her, I was like, it's not your fault. And she almost broke down crying, right? Because how dare her ex-husband say it's not her fault? And I'm like, it's not your fault. You're a good mother. Like, he's being a 13-year-old, and we're going to have to rein him in, and we're going to have a talk with him, and we're going to have to co-parent together, because he's trying to pull the wool over your eyes while he's with you, and then he's lying to me when he's with me. So we have to come together to help this stop. So how important is parenting in the role of helping our kids? Like, I think even in the realm of parents, we want to self-diagnose our children real quick with, oh, they must have ADHD or they must have depression because they're not acting like we acted when we were kids. It's like a different economy of sorts in the mental health area. And I think, when I grew up, mental health wasn't as prevalent back then. And now that is such an overwhelming thing in our face. Now these things are coming to life, and we just don't want to really like accept it or deal with it. So how can parents be better, I guess, equipped not to just completely say, oh, my son's this or my son's that, and get the right help or right support to decide what they actually need to be successful and healthy and happy?
I think you hit the nail on the head earlier, when it's that willingness from a parent's perspective to have that really brutally honest, objective self-reflection about things. And like, my first question, like if talking to a parent and they were trying to diagnose their kid, I would want to know why. Like, very simply, like, why? Because usually what it leads to is that the parent just wants their kid to be okay. And also, as humans, like, we are natural problem solvers. Doesn't mean we're effective problem solvers, but like, our brains work to find some type of a solution to explain things whatever way we can. And if you feel like you don't know what to do as a parent, if you feel helpless, if you feel overwhelmed, then being able to name what it is can help make it more concrete to then be addressed. And it's almost like the same thing as like the kid that's trying to self-diagnose, like just having some type of label on it is better than no label at all, even if it's inaccurate. So I think like the parents wanting to self-diagnose, it's really anxiety driven more than anything, and just really wanting to do right by their kids. As far as the communication piece that you spoke to, and how important is parenting, like, I mean, it's not there. I mean, there is such thing, obviously, as nature versus nurture, but it's a whole hell of a lot of nurture, man, because people are in a child's temperament, their intelligence, their family history, like stuff that nothing is changing. Like that is what that is. But the way someone approaches the world, the way someone approaches problem solving, the way someone approaches failure, people in struggles, like how you go about navigating the world, like that is a lot from parenting, because you have until adolescence before your influence really starts to dwindle. So it's those early years that are absolutely essential to be teaching your child how to navigate the world, and ideally navigate the world successfully, that puts them not just in like a position to succeed right then and there, but setting them up to do what every parent hopes is going to happen, is that they're going to raise a child that is going to be an independent, contributing member to society, essentially, in like some way, shape, or form. So there's that part. And then to your point, then communication, like, man, I will die on that hill every day of the week. To me, like, communication is king. And I find it resonates significantly when working with kids and teens. Like, me being willing to be transparent with what I'm thinking, why I'm thinking it, why I'm making my decisions, even if they don't like it, they are able to find a level of respect for it, because I'm just giving things out rationally and logically. So I think talking to a child like a person, not talking to them like a child, is such a big difference. And it's like treating them with that respect, not the whole like, because I said so, or your kid does something and then you just randomly put in some type of punishment, when maybe if the kid was aware, if they made that type of choice, maybe they wouldn't have done that. Because we also are really good at being decision makers when we know what to expect and we know what we value, what consequences we want and don't want. And the only way you're going to understand for a child what they really value and don't want is to be able to communicate with them. So to me, like, transparency, being willing, I'd much rather tell someone the truth and piss them off and distress them and then support them through that and guide it, than to sugarcoat things or withhold information because I'm worried what they might say or do or think of me.
I like that. And that has to deal a lot with integrity on top of that. And I had to learn the hard way, because my first two kids, I have three kids, and my daughter's 25 and my middle son, he's 24. And I was the father, being from the military and being a cop, do as I, say, not as I do, and punish them if they didn't do something right, but the punishment maybe didn't fit the crime. So with the 13-year-old, it was a huge difference to not yell, not scream, talk, at a normal tone, and really explain to him, like, look, this is why I'm upset, because you did this, this, and this goes against my values because of this, and this is how we're going to fix it. And I learned that essentially that communication was huge in not only helping me with my current marriage and my anger issues and everything, but just being able to be a more relatable parent. It's not about me being his friend or his buddy. He knows I am his dad, and I'm here to protect, provide, and preside over him. But I can talk to him and say, look, I don't understand why you did this. Can you please tell me what you were thinking? Not, this was impossible. How dare you? You're a bad kid. Just reframing our words and how we speak to people, I think is very important, not just for children, but for society as a whole. So we were talking backstage a little bit about AI. I'm a heavy proponent user of AI for my business, my day-to-day. But there are some dangers there and some dangers that we may be seeing in children. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, one like anything else, things can be used for good or for evil, and moderation and everything. But the explosion of AI, we're really just starting to get some of the data coming out, and what we're starting to see is that more and more teenagers are relying on AI as a companion. And for any of us that have used some type of AI like a Claude or a Chat GPT, like they will make you feel like you are the greatest person in the world. Like you just get constant validation. You're never challenged. You're always interesting. Your emotions are always validated, and AI is also always available. So it's it's really seductive. Like it's what, like so many times I talk with people. I'm like, look, I don't blame you for feeling the way you feel or how you're trying to deal with things. Then the question becomes like, are you getting the results that you want for yourself? So like the infatuation with AI, it's easy to grasp, but then what are those unintended consequences? Like then they're never being challenged. They're not having to pick up on social cues because they're just typing into a screen all the time. They're not having to understand empathy or someone else's perspective. It's again, it's really scary in my opinion of the potential dangers of AI, and if we are not swift with how we're going to regulate it, monitor it, we're going to be in trouble. I feel fairly strongly about that, and I'm not anti AI. Just like I like to your point, using it for your business, I think there are so many incredible applications for it. But like most really incredible inventions or innovations that come in humanity, there are always a level of unintended consequences, and I think we're starting to see that just really start to come out now with the data to support it, where it's not just anecdotal anymore.
Yeah, I guess in hindsight, and it's hard because we're in this digital era. It seems like we really have to find a way to get, because even I tell my wife this all the time. Even with texting, I hate texting. I'd rather talk to you on the phone, because if I tell my wife through text, babe, how come you didn't make dinner? She can take that any way she wants. She can take that as, oh, okay, I didn't make dinner. She can take it as I'm yelling at her. But if I talk to her on the phone, I'm like, babe, I'm really hungry. Did you make dinner? She's going to hear the inflection in my voice. She's going to know that, like, maybe I had a long day and I want to make sure I get home and get something to eat. And so that's pretty scary with social media, with AI, with texting. We're in this digital age. We really have to figure out how to get kids like back in conversations. One of the things that drive me absolutely up the wall, and I've done probably multiple episodes on it, there's nothing more I hate than you go to a restaurant and two people are on their cell phones and their kids are sitting there and the kids are on the tablets and they're playing games and no one's conversating with anybody. And then they wonder why their kid Johnny can't talk to the teacher properly or can't do work properly. So are those some of the things you've seen with the disassociation of not having like a human communication element?
Oh yeah, yeah. Right now, like working with kids and teenagers on a daily basis. Initially, their communications, interpersonal communication skills are pretty brutal for the most part. And again, a lot of it, like I don't think it's their fault. Like if you're permitted to be on your tablet at dinner and not having to interact with people, then like you're just going based on what you learned and the position that you're being put into. But what I have though noticed is that once they like on my unit, like once they get to know me, once they see my approach, and so much of it is approaching them with authenticity and empathy. Like I tell them all, like I'm going to prove myself to you or try to prove myself to you. I actually know what I'm talking about. I actually care about helping you, and I'm actually genuine. Like what you see is what you get. And once they start to feel actually seen and heard, they become way more willing to talk to you. And I think like that speaks to not only do people like and teenagers and kids these days have a difficult time interacting, but it makes me think that what's at the basis is like, is that fear of judgment, is that anxiety component, because Otherwise, like, then just jump in. And as a child and adolescent psychiatrist, it's my job to create a safe space to make a child be willing to be vulnerable and themselves with me. So, uh, I guess what I'm ultimately getting at is, yeah, man, it's an issue, but I've seen approaches that will allow someone to break out of their shell, so to speak, and just have a normal, regular conversation. Because like I'll walk into the unit and be like, "Good morning," and the kids will just like stare at me. I'm like, "Good morning," and like get right in their face and like, "Oh, good morning." I'm like, "Oh, so you do know how to talk? Oh, cool. Just wanted to make sure." So like sometimes being over the top and taking that approach has been effective, but I think they're way more capable than maybe their social skills are letting on.
Do you think there's ways, and I was just thinking about this, is there ways that parents maybe can do activities or things on social media with their kids to have that togetherness, but not take away the electronics per se?
I mean, probably for younger kids, for teenagers, I don't. There's nothing that really like immediately comes to mind to me. It's being more cognizant of the monitoring, having the open conversations, because it would be pretty rare for a teenager to act like really welcome that
Right, right.
to bond there. But like if you can create something as simple as like, can you tell me something? Give me one or two things interesting that you learned from scrolling on social media today or yesterday. And if you start to like do that and becomes part of the routine, like how we would just ask someone how was their day, you're going to start to get information, and you are going to start to be able to pick up on themes and what's resonating with your kid and teenager, and then you're letting them have their space appropriately. You're letting them not feel like a social pariah because everyone's on social media. You're being able to better understand and get a sense of what they're being exposed to. And by having the conversation, you're getting them being able to put their feelings or experiences or thoughts actually into words and to articulate it effectively. So like to me, like that would be the approach of trying to find that sweet spot.
I like that, and I truly believe, like, even for me, when I have my son, we sit down and have family dinners, and it's not just like, "Oh, how was your day at school?" Fine. It was like, "No, what did you do today?" And really get deep into the. Once again, conversation is key. But I kind of like that if you know the favorite influencer they're following, or the famous streamer they're following, or the favorite video game if you don't play games with them, and be able to have a little bit of knowledge on that to interact with them, they might be like, "Oh, my dad's, he's kind of cool. He understands who, Mr. Beast is, or who this person is." So I like that conversations being key. Now, in the realm of adults, before we end the show, for adults that are maybe feeling the anxiety of social media, the doom scrolling, the thinking that their life's not as perfect as the people they're seeing on the other end, what's some tips or something that they can do to start helping themselves from the dangers of social media?
Remind yourself constantly that you don't know, meaning whatever you see, you don't know what else is going on with that person and in their life. In the world of behavioral health, we call it mental filtering, where you ignore certain pieces of information and only focus on others that will reinforce a belief, whether it's a positive belief or a negative belief. It's why like man, right now, like there's so much extremism in society, and then things are getting curated for you that will only support your belief and not question it. And then we've also come to the point of like, okay, even if it's something that actually would question it, I'm going to dismiss it as being inaccurate or fake or motivated for some other reason. So I think it's like just really keeping in mind that it's not real. It's a snapshot, that what you see on social media does not define the person that you're seeing. Is really the main thing to me, because man, I see. I can't stand social media, to be like very, very blunt and honest with you. I stayed off of it for like 20 years, but I finally got involved on LinkedIn once just had to acknowledge that there's so much misinformation being spread from a mental health standpoint, especially for kids and teens, that I would be complicit in my silence. But man, them being like active and on there, there's so much stuff that drives me nuts, and seeing how people present themselves, and like how convenient is like one of the things that runs through my mind when I scroll and see some of people's stuff. Like, how convenient that you're the one that has all the answers and I'm the one who's reading, and what exactly I lack, you have. And not only do you have it, but you can also tell me how to get it. Like, dude, like it drives me nuts, because like people are all the same. We're all just trying to feel good enough, and some of us feel good enough by doing things that help the greater good, and some of us feel good enough by making others feel less than. And I think that being aware of that can go a long way, where you take it all with a grain of salt.
And I love that, and that speaks huge to a lot of people. Just want validation these days, and I'm not a fan of social media either. If I wasn't a public persona, I definitely would not be on social media. But I do try to be my authentic self, and everything I comes from a place of trying to help people. And one thing that people can do, if you don't realize this, remember, especially with like Instagram, TikTok, the algorithm does stuff based on things that you watch, see, you consume, right? We know what you consume can consume you. So for me, being a mindset guy and a coach, I try to follow more fitness accounts, more coaching accounts, more healthy eating accounts, things that are going to provide me value. If you're following things that are going to show you like how bad the president is or how sucky the world is, it's going to really change the chemical part of your brain. And maybe you can speak on this, how the chemical effect of the brain from doom scrolling or seeing positive things, especially in teens and kids, like social media can really affect us in a very positive or negative manner based on what we're consuming, correct?
Absolutely. A lot of it comes down to the reward and pleasure chemical dopamine. Like, it's when you see something that you like, it gets released and tells you, not only do I like this, but get me more of it. And then it can go the other way. Like, once you fall into something like anxiety and depression, you will tend to feed it and look for things to keep it going, really unintentionally. And then, to your point, the algorithm will lead you down that rabbit hole and will take it to an extreme. So it does impact the brain, because like to a degree, like when you think about addiction, it really does rewire the brain. It makes you get artificially high levels of dopamine, so that you could be like, oh, I love pepperoni pizza, and gives you an appropriate amount of dopamine, but then you have something that is intoxicating in some way, shape, or form, and it releases like artificially high levels of it. So then if you keep consuming that, your brain's now getting primed to need artificially high levels to feel okay. And so that means that just like normal everyday things, your slice of pepperoni pizza now ain't doing it. And it's, I need more, I need more, I need more. And then you can also start to feel depressed relatively. Like, it's not that you're that far below baseline or below the surface. It's comparatively, relatively to the artificially high levels of dopamine that your brain's getting, it feels like you're depressed. And it takes a significant amount of effort and time to really rewire that brain. Like those, like at least like the first 30 days, then 90 days, then 18 months. Like, these are like key periods to rewire the brain and its reward system.
That's awesome. And where can they, if people want to find out more about what you do, your resources, or where you're at, where can they link up with you at?
Yeah, LinkedIn is really the best place to find me. It's really like the main place to find me when it comes to social media and being accessible. And then if you're just looking for education about mental health when it comes to kids and teens, the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, AACAP.org, has a wealth of information and resources. And there's some stuff on there that are for the clinicians and the experts, but there's a lot of stuff on there that is meant to be public facing for consumption from parents and caregivers. Especially, we have this thing on there called Facts for Families. There's over like 100 of them, and it's everyday type of scenarios, whether it's, okay, what do I do with, I think my child is depressed, to when is the right time to get a cell phone. Like, it's really meant to be public facing and give that that peace of mind and understanding for parents and caregivers to best guide their children.
That's awesome. And guys, as usual, when this airs, this will be linked in the show notes, so you can get to Doc Mateka on LinkedIn or go to that valuable resource and do whatever you need to do to get some free research to possibly help. I always ask my guests this, Doc, the last question of the night. What is your definition of turning pain into progress?
Not giving away your power and taking the power back. When you go through pain, it will change you. It will change how you see things. And next thing you know, you give your power and control away to things that are out of your control. When you own your power and you don't give it away, that's how you go from having your life dictated to you dictating your life.
I love that. And guys, my final thoughts are pretty much this. If you're a parent, love your kids, love on your kids, be there for your kids, communicate with your kids. Don't be afraid to get in deep conversation with them to find out who they are, who they want to be, and who they're trying to be around. If you're struggling with mental health issues, no matter kid, child, adult, get help. It doesn't hurt to ask for help, especially everything Coach Rob does is advocating for mental health and trying to break that stigma that if you're broken, it's okay. If you're not having a good day, it's okay. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you any less than anybody else in this world. There's help out there. There's resources out there. Very important episode. I can't wait to release this. Parenting is very important to me, especially as a man and a father, and anything we can do to help the kids to become the best versions of themselves when we are dead and gone off this earth is a beautiful thing. So, Doc, thank you for joining me tonight for this episode of the Battle Harder podcast. And as I like to say to everybody before I sign off, remember to always be fit for battle. Thank you.
You've just heard another real comeback story on the Battle Harder podcast, where we turn pain into progress and remind you that rock bottom is just the starting line. If today's message hit home, share it with someone who needs to hear it. You might just change their life. Subscribe, leave a review, and join the mission at battleharder.com. Until next time, stay disciplined, stay dangerous, and keep battling harder.